Hello, I'm Dan Beaver and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'd like to talk about self-esteem and other influences that shape us in our childhood to determine how we might be in our adulthood. And one of those is our peer group. Last time I talked about our parents and how they get there first and they influence us, and then we give our power away to them telling us that we're okay, asking them to validate us. Well, the next group, that major influencer on us, I think, is our peer group, especially when we get into middle school and high school. High school really has an impact, I think, on how we feel about ourselves, because there's standards and attributes that determine self-worth in high school that continue on into adult life, unfortunately, for some people. So if you think about what were those attitudes, what were those, things that made people feel good about themselves back in high school? Typically what I find when I ask my students that, who are just coming out of high school into college, that things like the kind of clothes they wear, who their friends are, what kind of music they listen to, if they have a car, those kinds of things. For me, it was very similar. 50 years ago, oh God, 50 years ago, it was the same thing. Then it was what kind of car you had, because if you had what was considered a cool car, you had a lot of friends and lots of girls wanted to go running around with you. So that was a big thing, cars. The other thing was what sport you played, especially for males. Because if you played football, you were a star just by playing football. Everybody looked at you like, oh my God, he plays football, or baseball, or basketball. Those are the key sports. And then, when you wore your Letterman's jacket on Friday at Spirit Day, you went around and you felt like you were great, and your self-esteem was way up there. Other things like the friends you hung out with, I think still mattered then. There was like territory, areas that were, where you hung out during lunchtime and in the quad area. And if you hung out with the right people, right, in quotes, then you were cool just by association with those people. And then that was, as a male, that was who you could ask certain girls out because you were in the right group. So it was a very major caste system during that time. It was kind of like early sorority fraternities in high school, really. So those were some of the things that were important when I was there. Clothes were important too, because you had the right clothes, you were cool again. If you had not the right clothes, then they kind of put you down for that. So that's how it was for me in high school. Unfortunately, I kind of struck out on everything. I didn't make it. I didn't have a car. My mother didn't let me have a car. I had a 10-speed bike, and that was not cool to have a bike. It was kind of geeky. So, we'd try to get rid of the bike before we got to school, because we didn't want to walk 3 or 4 miles in the hot sun in LA. So we ditched it, and then we could be cool again. But no car. Didn't have a car. I played sports, varsity sports. I lettered all the time I was in high school, but it was the wrong sport. It was tennis. And tennis was like the no respect sport. It was like a pussy sport, and the baseball team used to make fun of us all the time. This is before tennis really got to be what it is today. It's a whole different world. So I kind of struck out on the sport thing. And I had my friends, but they were kind of the insecure little boys club, and we hung out way outside in the field away from the school, and, just kind of reinforcing our low self-esteem. And so that affected the way we, ask out women or not, or just isolated. So in high school, I just didn't make it. And it didn't matter what my mother said. My mother would always say, "Hey, you're wonderful, Dan. You're handsome. Everybody would like you." And I said, "Yeah, Mom. Then why doesn't the homecoming queen want to go out with me? Don't give me this stuff, So yeah, she's trying to be supportive. But when you get to school, it totally is about what the peer group thinks. So in high school, I didn't have any self-esteem. Basically, I was just, I didn't have nothing going for me. So I went to community college, and the problem with community colleges is a lot of the same people you went to high school with go right with you. And if any of you have been in the same area for the whole time. You go from elementary school to middle school to high school to community college. It's like you can't escape that whole thing. I mean, it's like you're locked in, in a way. And then luckily I got out of, community college, and I transferred to the University of California, Berkeley. And at Berkeley, no one knew me. No one knew me. I had no track record. I was totally a whole new thing. And that set me free because no one cared about cars at Berkeley because they're a pain in the ass because where you park them. 10 speeds were in. Nobody cared about sports. In those days, it was all about the war effort. It wasn't about, being in a sorority or fraternity. So everything that mattered in high school didn't matter at Berkeley. And I was like, okay, I could ask out any girl on campus if I wanted to. So I realized a major thing right there, and this is a great takeaway if you can get this, is that I realized how much power I gave my peers in high school and even community college, the power to determine whether I was any good or not as a person. I gave these people that power. And then I got really mad and I said, I can't believe I gave them that. Because at Berkeley, my self-esteem went up. I was feeling really good about who I was compared to high school. But then in high school, I was like nothing. So this was a major thing about giving power away to people to evaluate and determine your self-worth. Boy, when I realized that, that was a big deal because I wanted to take it back. And a lot of this validation and ideas still go into adult life because there's a lot of adults who still do that one-upsmanship. It's kind of like, well, where did your kids go to school? College. They're playing a one-up game. And so they're trying to make themselves feel good about who they are by where their kids went to college. I mean, that's sad. Or what kind of car they have. I see adults driving around in their cars saying, look at me, aren't I cool? It's like their whole self-esteem is based on the kind of car they have. Or even the neighborhood or how big their house is. I mean, it's all external. It's all about things. It's not about who they are. It's about what they have. And that's pretty hollow and that's pretty shallow, and it's hard to feel good about yourself when it's about things. Because in high school, we were validated by what we did. Not who we were. No one didn't get into that. It's just what we did. You were the football star. You're the homecoming queen. You're the badass in the school. It's more about your behavior, really. It's not who you are. And that's performance-oriented. It's always about performance, not who you are. And that continues into adult life because it's all about, performing and getting validated. And there's nothing wrong with doing a good job of something and getting validated for it. But that's not who you are. That's just that day you were on. So people come out of high school not being able to validate their own self-esteem. Why? Because if you thought positive about yourself in any way in high school, then you were judged, you were criticized, you were stuck up, you're egotistical, you're self-centered, you're an egomaniac, you're arrogant. Heaven forbid think something good about yourself in high school. You get put down. So the only way you can get any validation then is externally by what people say. And that's giving it away big time. So when you can say, hey, I got some assets, I'm a good person, and internally, I'm not saying go around telling everybody how great you are. That's bragging. That's like selling a weak product. If you have to hype the product, it's not any good, really. To me, it's like you got to be able to say it to yourself. So don't give your power to your peers because they're just like you. They don't have anything on you. And when I went to my 10-year high school reunion, I was with the same people and I didn't feel any inadequacy. We were all on the same page. We're all just people, some doing better than others. But, it isn't this one-ups thing that we did in high school. So hopefully that will be helpful. I want to continue this and talk about other influences. So until then, I'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks.